Alright, so I just got back from a track day and I broke some stuff. So I just had the pleasure of doing an East Coast drift school event this past weekend. The instructor Chris, who runs the drift school, he was actually there watching me do my runs and giving me pointers on how to enter and exit the turns. And I definitely feel like I learned a lot. You know, it is December right now, so the temperature is nice and cool, so I didn't have to worry about any heating issues with the car. And even though it was kind of cloudy lately, I didn't really see any rain that day either. So overall, it was pretty much the perfect day for going out and getting some solid seat time in the RX-7. So the section of the track itself that I was running was Raceway Park's back track, so they call it, which has a sweeping uphill corner followed by a S-turn. And this is the same track that I normally drive during regular track days. I actually got to do a few warm-up donuts and go right to doing laps without waiting behind 50 other people, which I particularly liked because of the fact that I was able to warm up and get in the groove of things by the time I was actually ready to go out and start doing my lap sessions out on track. And I was learning to be comfortable with the car mid-drift and, you know, spinning out a lot again and again and again. But eventually I was finding the limits of the car and eventually drifting through all the turns. Although, and this is where the fun part comes in, I managed to spin out, go off track, and the bottom of the car actually slammed into the pavement pretty hard. Now luckily my oil pan and all the other major components of the car itself, they were fine, but one of the couplers for my intercooler piping flew off and my steering sort of became slightly unresponsive. Whenever I used to turn the wheel to the right, the car would just continue to go straight, so I was understeering pretty hard. I don't know why. So I mentioned this to Chris, the instructor, and he did sort of confirm these issues to me after taking the car for a brief spin. So rather be safe than sorry, we sort of made a decision to end the session right there, cut it short. So that was that for the day. Although it was like the perfect conditions and nobody else was there, you know, the car trouble I had pretty much caused me to cut the session short. So essentially, as I was backing up the car to load up all my gear and tools and whatnot before I head out home, the steering wheel for the car just sort of jerked really hard. I don't know why, and I couldn't really turn anymore. So I stepped out to check it out, and lo and behold, I realized the control arm wasn't connected to my wheel anymore. Apparently one of the bolts came out that caused the wheel to sort of no longer be connected to the lower control arm. Luckily Chris had a bolt that sort of fit right into it so I can straighten out the wheel. And from there, you know, I decided to get a tow on the way home. I didn't want to risk driving 30 minutes home from the track because it could have just popped out at any second. And I'll get to in a bit why that was actually a really, really good decision I made. Yeah, these things happen. And you can't really get too upset about it because it's a natural part of the process. If you're going with the expectation that you're actually going to break something, and you do, it doesn't hurt as much. So I called my insurance because my car is in fact registered for normal street driving and I had to tow it home. Obviously, it would be just my luck to have a bunch of small things go wrong like that, but luckily these are easy fixes. Except for one last thing. As we got back to the warehouse, the car wouldn't move off the flatbed because obviously I had it towed. Now even when I turned it on and I placed it in reverse and tried to drive it off, the car wouldn't really move more than like a few inches. And clearly I realized some gears were stuck somewhere, transmission differential, whatever the case might be. So essentially what I had to do was I had to get the car in immediately because I don't have a parking lot outside my warehouse where this entrance is. It's pretty much a normal road and there's significant traffic that goes through that road, so I had to get in the car and put it in the warehouse as soon as possible. So essentially I just revved it as hard as I could. Luckily the clunking stopped and it sort of started rolling and moved normally. So I slowly brought the car in, and as I got out of the car and I looked at the road, and I found a trail of oil in the middle of the road where we took the car off. There was also some sheared bolts and actual pieces of my diff casing there. So yeah, my diff essentially grenaded itself. Obviously I had something to do with it because I was in a rush to get the car in. This looks like it might have been an oil issue, even though I hadn't really changed it in a while, and I should have double checked and topped up all fluids in the car regardless, I know. But considering the fact that I probably put less than 500 miles on this car in the past year or two. I didn't really think anything really needed to be double checked. So I mean, there's no real point in worrying about it now. I just got to fix it back up and get it roadworthy again. And one good tidbit is that I actually did drop the rear subframe back in 2015 for some modifications, so it should be pretty straightforward to replace the diff with a new one. And while I'm actually doing all that, I might as well add some new bushings and some tow arm to make it drive silky smooth and make it fully adjustable now, while I have everything out. So my friend Kevin actually came through and helped me remove the exhaust and the fenders off the car, so we can actually assess, if there's any other damage to the frame or the skeleton of the car, to make sure nothing's bent. Because if it's bent, normal cars, we will consider that totaled, and we don't want that because the car will no longer be able to drive straight. My initial expectation was that I might have damaged the frame of it, because I did go really hard off in the pavement, and I did bend my fenders and damage my metal fenders as well. So I figured the body underneath might have been bent, but luckily everything was fine aside from the damage that I mentioned earlier. So it should take a couple fixes and maybe placing some orders and finding some parts that we can replace, and the car should be good to go again. And basically, to round it all up, now I just need to fix my control arm, replace the coupler for the piping, which is easy, fix or maybe get new fenders because these are in actually pretty bad shape, and finally replace the diff. Now, aside from having to source the parts, which I have some good leads on already, it's pretty easy to get discouraged when things like this happen and your car breaks. But at the end of the day, if you do go into drifting and you even have a project car, you should have the expectation that sometimes things will need to be fixed and you have to spend some time working on the actual car. So this way you can be prepared and make repairs and maintenance a natural part of the process of owning like a fun project like this. You drive, you break things, you fix it, then you drive it again. But you should never stop having fun throughout the process. And that's the part of the reason why I decided to start this channel and make videos. It's because I wanted to encourage people to get out there and do something that isn't too convenient just right now, but in the end it's always going to be super rewarding. So anyway, I'll definitely be documenting the car as I bring it back to life. Like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, because I'll be posting incremental updates as we go along here. Yeah, thanks for watching.